For me, summer 2023 was normal. We had our share of hot, humid days, but I'm used to that. I grew up in the hot, humid suburbs of Washington, D.C., and we didn't have air conditioning. In Ithaca, New York, where I live now, summer 2023 was pleasant for the most part, with many days in the 70s Fahrenheit, not going above 25 on our Celsius thermometer. But for others, summer 2023 was anything but normal. In Phoenix, Arizona, temperatures were hot enough to melt street signs, and a woman who fell on the street was admitted to the hospital with burns from the hot asphalt. People without air conditioning flocked to cooling centers, bringing their suitcases for what ended up being months-long stays. The temperatures were even too hot for desert tortoises, who, like people, used water to cool down. What was your summer like? If you experienced a climate-related disaster, whether heat wave, flooding, or drought, or simply watched others suffering from afar, did you feel hopeless? Each year, climate change becomes more evident, and humanity seems to ignore the predicament we are in, like the lemmings running off the cliff. As climate disasters like fires burn forests in Siberia, in Canada, and the US, politicians ramp up their denials as if the very idea of climate change threatens their identity. They act like tortoises with their head in the sand. Yet, to paraphrase writer and scholar Robin Wall Kimmerer, climate despair is paralysis. It robs us of agency. It blinds us to our own power and the power of the earth. So, what do you do if you have some hope remaining and you want to do something to address the climate crisis? You could start by examining your own emissions or your own carbon footprint. Two of the most important actions we can take are reducing meat and dairy consumption and cutting out food waste. These and other actions like walking or using less plastic are things we do in our daily lives or lifestyle actions. Other actions, like joining a Friends of Park group that helps clean up local green space, are called stewardship actions. In spring 2024, schools closed because temperatures reached 45 degrees Celsius or 113 Fahrenheit in South Sudan, a country racked by poverty and violence. Perhaps you can contribute money to a humanitarian, women's health, or education organization to help those in South Sudan. This would be a donation or philanthropy action. Or you might decide the best way to address the climate crisis is to change the system, governments and corporations. You decide to become an activist and participate in a climate protest. Non-violent protests like boycotts, strikes, rallies, street marches, and even blocking streets are forms of activism. Advocacy is another strategy to change governments and corporations. Advocacy involves working with government, businesses, and other institutions to change governance and financial systems. Although advocacy and activism overlap, activism is more confrontational and radical than advocacy. All these climate actions are important in bringing about desperately needed changes and in counteracting the personal despair some people feel in light of the looming climate crisis. But for now, let's dive deeper into advocacy. Advocacy means trying to influence decisions within businesses, workplaces, universities, and government. It is about trying to change policies, as opposed to lifestyle actions in which we reduce our individual emissions by reducing food waste or driving an electric vehicle. Advocacy is about working collectively to change laws and institutional rules. When the city of Denver implements a new policy providing residents with food waste bins, and then the city collects and composts that waste, it becomes easier for individuals to reduce the food waste that would have gone to the landfill. When a state supports the installation of charging station, it becomes easier to drive an electric vehicle. Communicating and forming ongoing relationships with elected representatives and government officials, for example, by letter writing and face-to-face meetings, are forms of advocacy. Public campaigns that include workshops, social media, and research-based reports are another form of advocacy. My journey to advocacy began by volunteering with 3 climate organizations: Elders Climate Action Now, and the Climate Reality Project. Volunteering with a climate organization is a great way to become an advocate because you become part of a collective of individuals with different expertise and policy advocacy experience. The groups I volunteer with also work with other NGOs as part of a climate advocacy coalition. This enables them to be even more influential than acting as individual NGOs. There are lots of ways we can get involved in climate action, from lifestyle changes to stewardship to philanthropy, activism, and advocacy. Advocacy is about trying to change the system through coalitions of civil society groups and friendly businesses and government officials working together to change policies.